Hey everyone, Emmanuel here. This week I want to cover off with everybody spinal health. So as it relates to your spine. Now, the approach that Systema takes with a lot of things applies perfectly with health as well as the martial art. But if you look at just the spine and say to yourself, let's kind of look at it from a skeletal perspective to begin with, right? When you look at the spine, you realize that all the vertebrae and all little spaces, our spine is really meant to move in lots of different ways. So, and then just look at it, like each vertebrae can be turned and the whole thing articulates in almost any direction, right? And then look at modern living and look at how there's a lot of sitting, there's a lot of very linear movements, walk straight or to the side or backwards. We don't really rotate or twist and turn as much as, let's say, we used to. And you can find that every once in a while. Like I'll go for a walk in, let's say, not a heavy forest, but like let's say you go through a walk in it, maybe off the beaten path, maybe just go into some of the side paths in a forest, and you realize that you've got to step over, you've got to duck, you've got to turn, you've got to move your head out of the way of a branch, you got to step over a log, step over a small stream, and you realize that there's a lot more twisting and reaching and turning, and this is really where we've evolved from. So to develop spinal health and to kind of see movements, like body movements originating from the spine, is really like a true sense. Like our arms and legs can do a lot of wonderful things for us, and we might depend on them a lot. Understand how to move from the spine and to have like a healthy spine, it will radiate to lots of other parts of your body. So this week's topic, I want to talk about spinal health, okay, and just moving and strengthening and really expressing all the little ways that our spine can rotate and finding a way to actually train with that. So that's going to be today's topic, and it is very much a Systema approach that I'm showing you, because we're breathing, we're always going to be breathing, we're always going to stay relaxed and try to relax as much as we can, and we're going to try find movement, or those smaller, deeper movements, because you look at the vertebrae of the neck and as they get small and then larger, even towards the hip, the vertebrae are bigger and they're very tightly packed, but there is movement. There is tiny little bits of movements and tendons and ligaments in there going in every which direction. And if one or two of those areas can't move, or even more, you start to feel, I feel tight, my low back, or my neck's got a kink, or my middle back. And you realize that while the spine is made up of many different vertebrae, it is one spine too. So it's all connected. So you can often trace back problems. So let me show you how I would start, okay? And you can build on it. I would begin, let's begin on the backs, right? So you're gonna stay on your back. And what I'd like to do is kind of get my back as flat as I possibly can. So in other words, there is a little bit of a curve under my neck, and there's a curve in my low back, and I'm trying to like make my spine as straight as I can. So removing or reducing the curve in the neck, reducing the curve in the low back, and staying nice and straight. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to begin by starting to shuffle. So I'm not using my arms or legs. They might they're just on the ground, but I'm kind of trying to move from my spine. So I'm shuffling like left and right, and I'm just kind of trying to get my spine to like articulate. I'm trying to get it to kind of move like a, like those sidewinder snakes kind of a thing, right? With it, I'm feeling like that I can actually move my spine kind of as I need sideways. And I'm trying to stay on the ground as well.
Of course, I'm trying to relax and breathe. I'm trying not to use my elbows or my heels. I'm really just kind of shuffling along the floor. What I'm feeling now is there are parts of my back that I can feel and other parts I really can't feel. This is very common. No, it's not unusual, but nonetheless, it's good to kind of pay attention. So a lot of the training, especially at the very early stages, where the beginner level training of let's say working with your back, you're also figuring out the things that you can't feel or the things that you feel. So it's kind of like what something is and what something's not, so to speak. So I would begin like that on my back, and I'm going kind of sideways now, but now I'm going to start to go up and down. So I'll start a little bit lower down here, right? So you can see. So now I start to kind of I work my way up and then down. And you can see I'm starting to kind of relax my hips and my shoulders to kind of wiggle my way up, right? And wiggle my way down. And again, I'm just trying to relax, and I'm really my arms and my legs are just kind of there. I really want to feel the movement generating from my spine. And different from the sideways, going up and down, I found different parts of my spine freeing up, right? So it's kind of I won't say it's just a warm up, but my spine feels alive. Now, there's a kind of a psychology that goes along with this. If you could imagine the last time you did this, you would have been maybe a baby, lying in a crib. And there's really not much you can do. When you look at a baby, the first thing it does is it kind of just rolls over. And much like the same idea, as I'm doing this, as I'm moving, left and right, up and down, there's going to come a point where I want to kind of slowly rock my spine and roll over. And I'm going to try that same sequence of sideways and up and down from the spine. And then again, I'll roll over and I'll try it from my back. Then I'll try it from my front. And what I'm doing is, again, I can do this for anywhere between 5 even and 10 minutes, where you're just moving this part of your body. And by rotating over to your front and rotating over to your back, and going left and right, up and down, even in circles, you can spin yourself in a circle even. You start to move your spine in ways maybe you only did when you were years ago. And I will leave you with an idea of this, where there are certain movement patterns that are like a fountain of youth, right? Because moves you make are definitely imprinted in your brain. So as you're doing this movement, your body is trying to understand, or your brain is trying to understand, the last time I did this, I was this old. And all of a sudden, you know, you feel that. So it's no different than listening to a song that maybe the first song you listened to when you got a car, or you got your driver's license, and you played a favorite song when you were first driving. And then you hear that song 20, 30, 40 years later, and it brings you back to that time. Well, if that exists with the song, why would that not exist with the movement, right? So maybe you just can't index it or find it quick enough, but your brain can, and it's there. So certain movement patterns elicit youthfulness. So it's really, if you were to do this over, 6-month period, just 5-10 minutes a day, you'd be surprised how your body starts almost turn back the clock. I feel that many times when I do this, right? Now, that's a beginning stage, okay? Like just starting from the ground, front and back, and rolling over, okay? The next level that I like to do is the same idea, but my legs and arms are up. So again, it's much harder now because I don't have like my legs or arms to kind of help me. So it's like the movements are smaller. So if I'm going down, right, I've got to like pick up my hips. I've got to move my shoulders, right? And it's a very small movement, even if I start to rotate myself, right? And, again, you're starting to kind of feel, because in this position, my hips are pushed forward, my shoulders are a little bit up, and I'm accessing different parts of my spine, okay? And the same thing would happen if I roll over onto my stomach and I lift my arms and legs up. And I just start to kind of move. And then I can go back to my back and try this again. So it's definitely harder, a little bit more physically harder, because you need to lift up your arms and legs, so there's some muscular activity. But you also isolate the body, the core body. So because of that, you have to, your back and spine start to kind of you have to work a little bit harder, there's no doubt. The movements are smaller, but I actually feel them more than when my arms and legs are on the ground. So wonderful movement, kind of get your spine kind of moving up, expanding, kind of opening, closing. So what you're looking for is that your spine starts to be able to move very supple, right? So this way and this way, right? And, I do feel where I'm a little bit tighter on this side. I can feel that effect. Everybody will have that. It'll start to isolate, like, tight shoulder blade back here, tight hip over here, old injuries, whatever it is. But the movement is nutrition. It's like a lifeline. It's breath to the body in many regards, right? So you want to be breathing, you want to be moving, you want to be relaxing, and you want to be feeling your spine. Maybe at the beginning you can't because it's so stiff, but it will over time move more. Okay, now that's a very mild approach. Let's say you want to use and facilitate more movement in the spine. There's two things I like to use with my back to get it kind of moving a little bit more if I need. It's a small and big roller. These are about 4 inches, okay, but you can get 3-inch, 2-inch versions. It doesn't matter. They're just bigger. So a lot of people use these to kind of massage muscles, and it's possible you can do that, of course. I like to do it in my back, not so much for the muscles. I mean, the muscles, I'll feel it there, but I'm focusing on vertebrae by vertebrae, like opening it. So let me just kind of show you what I mean. So I'll take this and I push myself on, and of course I feel the muscles in the back. But what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to feel that vertebrae and then the next one. And I feel like it's like it's like open, you know, and then one more. And I go very slowly. And I can feel not only the vertebrae, but I feel the pressure on the ribs and the sternum because it's pushing, right? So as I relax, it goes more and more and more. So I love this thing for literally feeling my vertebrae opening, right? Because it's putting them in a position that it doesn't normally. And it's almost opposite to that office position, right? Hunched over. And I'll literally go all the way. I'll work my way all the way till I get to like my hip or just to the top. And I'll kind of stay there. And I'll slowly now work my way up the other way. So, and this way is much harder. Yeah. Again, the muscles feel great to get massaged like this, but my main focus is the skeletal. I'm feeling the spine. And then when I finish that, I'll do it even from the front, because what a lot of people don't fully understand is the sternum and the way the ribs connect, they connect all the way to the back. They connect right to the back of our spine. So you can also apply pressure onto the front and feel it in your back. So it'd be hard to see, but at least you kind of understand what I'm trying to get at. So lying down again, and now the roller is pushing up, like gravity is pushing me down, and I slowly, you know, inch by inch, you know, allow this to push my back up and my vertebrae out. And even as I get to my stomach, I relax and I let the roller push into my low back and open up those big vertebrae at the back. And then I'll obviously work my way back down. Inch by inch by inch. When I've done that, I like to even add the sideways version. So I started with like under my armpit, and you can see now how my spine is kind of crooked, right? Because I don't just want to move my spine like that. I also want it to move like sideways, like left and right. So as I roll, now the dowel is pushing up. So it's pushing my ribs and my spine crooked. So it's pushing it, you know, and I add that, and I just literally feel, of course, the muscles and everything, but the focus is my spine. So my spine now has a bend like that because of it. And I track it all the way until I get to the hip. And many times in this position, I can actually get any adjustment towards my hip, because now it's pushing onto my hip. And I'll do the other side. Start to roll, roll, roll. All the way until I get to my hip. So now by using this, it's kind of forcing my spine to bend in ways, again, it doesn't bend all the time, right? During my day-to-day. Now, the other thing is a smaller one. Now, what I like about this smaller one, I think it's about maybe 6 inches across and 4 inches in diameter. I put this one straight down the spine. And I find that you have these two big muscles that work down along the spine, right down along it. And they're the ones that are maybe a little bit more tense than other ones. And this allows me to feel it a lot more. And I find that because it's narrower, I feel the bending in the, that opposite direction much clearer than, because it's surface area. This is a bigger surface area, so you don't feel it as much. This is smaller. If this was half, like 3 inches, I'd probably feel it even more, right? So let me show you what I mean. I put this behind my neck, and I slowly push my way up, just like I did, inch by inch. And because it's thinner, now my weight is concentrated, and it just feels different than this bigger one here. It's more, I have the same weight, but a smaller surface area, so I'm feeling it more. And I really do feel this isolates my spine a lot more than this big one, but it does too, but this little one even more. Once I get to, like, let's say the tailbone, right there, I get to the tailbone, that part's weight. There's not a lot of movement that goes in there, and I like to spend a little bit of time and then literally work my way back, inch by inch. I got caught on my, there we go. It got caught on my t-shirt. Inch by inch by inch by inch. Oh, feels so good. Okay. Wow, my spine already feels much looser. That alone will give you such a healthy spine. In many cases, when people have movement pattern issues, you can trace it back to a lack of mobility in the spine. And because of that, the mobility then starts to affect the flexibility because you don't have the full range. So a whole host of issues can originate right from the spine. So just this that I showed you, done consistently every other day, whenever you're working out as a warm up or at the end as a cool down, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, huge difference in your spinal health and tension that's there. Now, there's a lot of other things I do. This is just kind of like a first step. Now you can feel that exact same thing of bending vertebrae by vertebrae and coming up vertebrae by vertebrae in an exercise that I started about maybe 5 to 10 years ago. And the name, I hope I'm getting it right, it's called the Jefferson's curl. Now this, again, really good thing. You can use like lots of weight or a little bit of weight. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm just gonna stand up and it'll be easier for me to explain this to you. Now I'm just using okay, better. Okay, so I'm just using I don't know, a 3 kilogram medicine ball. It can be any sort of weight that you have. Now I do this with much more weight, but I'm just going to show you with a ball, right? So I'm staying nice and straight. My posture is kind of good. And a good way to, if you're not sure like how to check or gauge posture, I use a wall. Like I've got a wall behind me here. I'm literally just going to put myself up against the wall, and my head, my heels, my bum, my shoulder, everything is on the wall. And it's like I center myself, like I align myself. So you should always make sure you're straight. So stay nice and tall, got good posture. I'm holding this weight, I'm grabbing it. It's not a lot. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my head. I'll show it to you from different angles, but I'll just show you this front one first. So I bend, like I try vertebrae by vertebrae I've bent the ones that I can feel. Now I start to bend those vertebrae that are in the, upper neck and shoulder area. So I start to round out my back. So I'm opening up my back vertebrae by vertebrae, one by one. I start to round out my back and bend forward. And now I'm into the middle of my back, and I'm not racing. It's not a hamstring stretch, but I'm trying to feel my back opening, not just stretching, but opening. And vertebrae by vertebrae, I'm starting into getting into the low back ones now. Now at this point, you really have to pay attention if you want to access the last few vertebrae, the big ones. You really, 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 really need to access. And then when I get as low as I can, I now come up vertebrae by vertebrae. So I don't just sit up, but I start to curl, hence the name Jefferson curl. I curl my way up. Vertebrae by vertebrae. Now, this can be a stretch, much like the other one I showed you. It can definitely, but your focus and your attention are on your spine, okay? So it literally, your back starts, you bend your neck, your upper back, mid back, low back, and you start to get into that point where you're bending and you're hinging at the hips, the legs stay straight. Now, I do this with a bar and 45 pounds on each side as a kind of a starting point. I can do much more. It's not the weight. You'd be surprised. You can actually, if you understand this, you can do quite a bit of weight. Going down is one thing, coming up is a whole other ball game. The idea is that you want to be able to relax your spine and allow yourself to bend in the middle. It's almost like a pike position. It's a position where, the legs and the body are folded, right? Because at its lowest point, if I show you kind of like the sideways version of it, right? So as I'm here, I bend in my neck, I round out, or start to curl the upper back, the upper back, and then now I start to get into the mid back, and now I start to kind of get into the mid lower. Now I start to get into kind of the beginning of the low back. Now I'm into like the deeper part of the hips, and I'm trying to round out my back and get as low as I can. Okay. And then when I come up, again, I round out my hip, my low back, still my low back, my lower mid back, now into the mid back, mid upper back, and neck. Now, when I'm doing this, you want to be able to get, I usually do it on an elevated plane, like I'm doing it on the floor now, and I'm wrapping my hands right under this ball. But if I had a barbell, I would be way below my feet. I can show you where you want to get. You want to be able to get, almost like a hand that you can see, like my hand is like where my knuckles. If I had a little bit more weight, I could get almost to my wrist, right? Again, your knees are straight and you're rounding out your back, okay? Lots of great footage on YouTube about the Jefferson curl. People that can explain it much better than I'm doing right now, but it gives you an idea of how to understand spinal health and moving from the spine, okay? And it's a movement that originated a long time, maybe when we were babies, when we were very, very young, before we used our arms and legs to run away or clutch for fear or to hold on to things. So these movement patterns have a psychosomatic effect on us, right? Right now that I've done that, I feel like my spine feels really, really adaptive. I'm able, it's like right away I can feel that I'm more elusive. I'm able to turn. So if or just to give you an example, right? If I was walking towards this pillar, I find that I'm able to, let's see if I can highlight it for you. I find that I'm able to, my spine is able to kind of really rotate, right? I feel like I can weave, you know, like I'm ready to kind of move in angles and in ways that, you know, in my day-to-day life, maybe I wouldn't be as adapted to, right? I wouldn't see it as much. So that's a good starting point for understanding your spine and finding opening the vertebrae. You will feel a stretch, there's no doubt, and that's okay, that's fine, but we're looking for the skeletal first, right? And a lot of it is because there's a lack of movement inside those vertebrae. And again, try to think of it, if you're hunched over a desk typing, your body takes this position and it starts to, you know, muscles start to become harder and denser. And if it's really bad, that position, you might want to go for some massage, some real deep massages to kind of get some movement or break up some of the fascia and scar tissue that might have been forming, just so that you can get to your spine, because you might not even be able to feel the bone, which is which is no good. You want to be able to feel your vertebrae articulating. What helps me is I'll look at a skeletal chart, or if there's a skeleton, meaning like a biology skeleton, we used to have it in school, and you would study all those little vertebrae and you would see, okay, like each one of these has to move. If it doesn't move, you're going to lose it. You need it to move. So when I watch that, when I study it, it helps me as I'm training to visualize what I'm trying to do. It really, really does help to kind of feel your back. And because of that, whatever it is that you decide to do, running, cycling, swimming, weightlifting, whatever it is you choose, martial arts, whatever it is that you do, you'll find that your source of power and your source of movement will originate from something further back than from your arms and legs, okay? And this is, it's not just my opinion, as I want you to understand this. Like, I've done a lot of sports, and if you look at, I'll give you an example of a tennis player. I knew a tennis player, and I went to watch them play some tennis, and their coach was yelling at them to make sure that when they hit the ball, or when they reached to hit the ball, that their body was in line, so that they weren't reaching from the arm or reaching from the leg, that they were in a position to return the ball in tennis from the body and from the spine. Reaching with your arms and reaching with your leg only makes your shot weaker. It doesn't allow you to access the rotation that comes from the spine and from the weight of the body. So there is a panic or a desperation that comes from working with the limbs, arms and legs. It's much more efficient to work from the body than it is from the limbs, okay? Bigger muscles, more weight, and it's more common. So something to think about for you guys when you're training. I will build on this, but maybe give it 4 weeks, like practice some of this. Again, 5 or 10 minutes before maybe the end of a workout, whatever you're doing, don't make it separate. It can just be integrated into something to increase your movement. And for those that just maybe have 10-minute break between a meeting or something, get on the floor and do this. You'll see your back will feel much better, and you'll have a lot better posture. Hope this helps everybody. I will see you next week with more training. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.